Peace, and welcome to another oddly familiar episode. Today we have Hideki Naganuma Samples Part 2. Before we start, I would like to add that Hideki Naganuma got all of these from a sample library. He didn't sample them from the pop songs. We could sit here and say what sample library it's from, but that's not what we want. We want to know the song that the sample actually came from. So let's get this underway. Up first, we have Funk to the Top. From the game Ollie King, listen for a man saying, "This joint right here." That vocal sample comes from the Fat Joe song titled Success.
Yeah, this joint right here is going out to everybody getting money.
Both of these samples can be heard within the first 3 seconds of each song. Basically, as soon as you hit play. I think this was an easy one to find because Hideki didn't change the tone or the speed or anything else. Plus, Fat Joe has a very distinct voice. So all I did was flip through a few Fat Joe songs and I found it rather quickly. From his 1995 album, Jealous One's Envy. It was released 9 years before Ollie King in 2004. Ollie King was released in arcades only. It was created by the same team that developed Jet Set Radio. All the way down to the composer, Mr. Hideki Naganuma.
This joint right here. Yeah, this joint right here is going out to everybody getting money. This joint right here is going out to everybody.
Up next, we have a double whammy. Another sample used in Funk to the Top from Ollie King. The vocals that say, "We're gonna do a song that you've never heard before."
We're gonna do a song that you never heard before.
This sample comes from Otis Redding and his live performance of the song Good to Me.
We're gonna do a song that you never heard before.
If you have heard this sample before, I'm not surprised because it has been used nearly 100 times on various songs. It's quite a popular sample, from the Bloodhound Gang to Public Enemy, and one of my favorites, Drunken Tiger. Otis Redding's song Good to Me was first released in 1966. However, this sample comes from a live performance album that was released in 1982. Otis died in 1967, and with him saying this is a song that you've never heard before, it was obviously recorded before the release date. After a little research, we have it narrowed down to 3 days, April 8th through April 10th in 1966.
We're gonna do a song that you never heard before.
We're gonna do a song that you never heard before.
Our next entry is another vocal sample. This one comes from Jet Set Radio Future on a track titled Oldies but Happies.
Come along, children. Now we're going to have a little music. Like old times, like old times. Look, now I'll start the melody on the organ.
From the original radio broadcast of Suspense, known as Fugue in C minor from 1978.
Come along, children. Now we're going to have a little music. Like old times. Look, now I'll start the melody on the organ.
Earlier in the video, I mentioned that Fat Joe has a recognizable voice, but it's not the most popular voice. This sample here comes from not only a recognizable voice, but someone that's quite famous. This is from the one and only Vincent Price. When I think of Vincent Price, I instantly think about his laugh on Michael Jackson's Thriller. Hideki has stated that he only uses sample libraries and that he does not pull samples from songs. With that in mind, this sample can be found on Norman Cook's sample library known as Skip to My Loops from 1992. Since he doesn't sample actual sources, there's a chance he pulled the sample from Skip to My Loops. So far, I have found a total of 8 samples that Hideki has used that can also be found on this exact same sample library by Norman Cook.
Come along, children. Now we're going to have a little music. Like old times, like old times. Look, now I'll start the melody on the organ. Come along, children. Now we're going to have a little music. Like old times. Look, now I'll start the melody on the organ.
Our next Hideki Naganuma sample comes from his song titled Let It Go. That vocal sample of someone saying Let It Go comes from the song titled I Need You Now by Cinnamon. Let It Go has been featured in our series before, as it contains the lyrical paragraph verse, which most people know as the Shutter rap from Einhander. However, the main sample used in this song is Let It Go. It's repeated over and over throughout the song. The sample was slowed down slightly, but it's still easily recognizable. The song I Need You Now was released in 1983, 21 years before Ollie King. Believe it or not, this has actually been sampled more times than the Otis Redding track. There's a popular breakbeat and lots of recognizable vocal samples. Our next sample we have today is from Jet Set Radio Future on the track Fly Like a Butterfly.
Like a butterfly.
That contains a sample from the original extended version of Atomic Dog by George Clinton. Atomic Dog was recorded and released in 1982. You can find it on his album Computer Games, which was released exactly 20 years before the game Jet Set Radio Future. Since its release, you can find it in various movies, many of them dog-related. This sample is blended in and sped up just a little bit. So it's not the easiest one to hear, but if you speed up the George Clinton sample to around 114% and chop off the first half of the sound, you would be left with something that sounds a lot closer.
Like a butterfly.
Up next, we have one titled Border 70 from the game Ollie King.
T-minus 31 seconds, and we're going for auto sequence start.
And that countdown comes from the STS-51C shuttle launch.
T-minus 31 seconds, and we're gone for auto sequence start.
A track with many samples, however, we will focus on the space launch countdown. Space Transportation System 15C was the 15th flight of NASA's Space Shuttle program. It launched on January 24, 1985. The mission lasted over 3 days and they traveled well over 2 million kilometers, or over 1.25 million miles. I'm not exactly sure who the narrator is. I searched, but to no avail. If anyone knows whose voice that is, please feel free to let us know.
T-minus 31 seconds, and we're going for auto sequence start.
T-minus 31 seconds, and we're gone for auto sequence start.
Up next is another one from Ollie King, Border 70, the Somethin Jazzy for Your Mind mix.
Something for your mind, your body and soul. Something for your mind, your body and soul. Something for your mind, your body and soul. Something for your mind.
And that uses a sample from Let No Man Put Us Under by First Choice.
I got something for your mind, your body, and your soul.
The original version was released in 1977 on the First Choice album titled Delusions. You can also find it on the Shep Pettibone remix that came out 6 years later in 1983. Shep Pettibone, whose real name is Robert Pettibone, is an American record producer most active in the 1980s, and he's still active to this day. First Choice is a vocal music trio from Philadelphia. They released a total of 6 albums, with the latest being in 1980. The vocals, I Got Something for Your Mind, Your Body, and Your Soul, have been sampled numerous times. One of the more memorable usages for me comes from the Ice Cube song titled Down for Whatever, which you may know from one of the greatest movies ever made, Office Space.
Something for your mind, your body and soul. Something for your mind, your body and soul. Something for your mind, your body and soul. Something for your mind.
I got something for your mind, your body, and your soul. I got something for your mind, your body, and your soul.
Our next track is from Jet Grind Radio, Rock It On.
Rock that shit, homie!
And that contains a sample of the Public Enemy song titled Terminator X Speaks with His Hands.
Yeah, y'all, that's right. Rock that shit, homie.
From the Public Enemy album, Yo, Bum Rush the Show, which was released in 1987, the vocals are from Public Enemy member Flava Flav. Flava Flav has one of the most unique voices in rap. If you have heard it once, you will probably remember it. Then he had his own TV show which brought his voice to a whole new generation. Jet Grind Radio, also known as Jet Set Radio, was first released in 2000 for the Sega Dreamcast, but you can find it on more modern consoles. And for example, the Steam version supports widescreen. With its soundtrack by Hideki Naganuma, it's one of the most popular parts about the game.
Rock that shit, homie. Yeah, y'all, that's right. Rock that shit, homie.
Our second to last sample comes from Jet Set Radio Future, Concept of Love.
Ready to kick some ass.
That vocal sample comes from the song Sucker DJ by Dimples D.
You ready to kick some ass?
From the sequel to Jet Set Radio coming out 2 years after, this is one of the more popular themes in the game. Like almost every track Hideki has done, it features plenty of vocal samples, but we are focusing on the Ready to Kick It part. It's right at the beginning of the Dimples D track. As soon as you hit play, this is what you hear. This track was originally released in 1983 and didn't chart. Later in 1990, it was remixed using a sample from I Dream of Jeannie, which you may also recognize from the DJ Jazzy Jeff and Fresh Prince song titled Girls Ain't Nothing But Trouble. This version of Sucker DJs was much more successful, charting in multiple countries.
Ready to kick some ass. You ready to kick some ass?
Our last one comes from one of my favorite Hideki tracks, Humming the Bassline from Jet Grind Radio. And that sample comes from I Can't Stop by John Davis and the Monster Orchestra. Located right at the beginning of the bassline, it's just a quick splash. On the John Davis song, it appears just before the 3-minute mark. It happens really quick, so you gotta pay attention, but it's right before the break beat. Released in 1976 on the Day and Night LP, this song has been sampled many times. From that same breakbeat we just mentioned to the same sample on Humming the Bassline. In our previous entry, we mentioned DJ Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince, and just to bring it full circle, they also used this sample on the song Parents Just Don't Understand. We do have more Hideki Naganuma samples, enough for another episode, so you can expect to see it sooner or later. Last, but very much not least, huge shout out to gold level patrons Bear Sona and Quantum X. I am ICC, thanks for watching, peace.
Sabotage, what? Order. Rappers too concerned with your looks, too dependent on trendy beats and radio friendly hooks. If you want it, we got it. Drop the deposit, get it poppin'. Got my target locked in. Order, look out, let me chock 'em. From California, where they talking with their hands like turntablists. Chop off your wrist, cut out your tongue if you plagiarist. Label the slanted, branded, tatted on my canvas. Did every whack rapper that was on your trash list. Don't ask kiss or beg for favors. Order did the beat, now play it loud, fuck your neighbors. As of the latest, the greatest to play this fake gamers pay to display this level of skill, but still to never fade us. Oh, geez.